If you or someone you know has gone through the challenge of abuse, this is the right place for you. We're going to cover some of the most important answers right now on our show called Answers for Survivors. So, welcome to today's show. We like to start out and look at how many questions our team has actually answered across the internet on this subject. And right now, 2,952 questions as of this week. So I'm so proud of Joy and Jenny and myself. It's been a lot of work. So let's jump in. So the first question we have today is, how can mindfulness support healing from trauma? You know, one of the things that I tried everything, and I think when you really get down to it, the research examining the non-response to all those traditional treatments for trauma, it really indicates that the inclusion of mindfulness skills can be beneficial. Let me show you what I found for you. So this is The Art of Living. It's actually a company founded in 1981 by a guy named Sri Ron Rakar. And what he does is he teaches people to meditate. And what's fascinating is you can see here that by 2025, they're almost at 1,327 centers around the world. 800 million people have taken his classes on meditation. It's not a religious thing at all. And it's really just a weekend where they teach you how to relax. And what's interesting is I actually found out about it from Timothy Ferriss. One of the things he advises people is when they become wealthy, that they need to really take care of their mindfulness. So I had a period in my life where I was like, I got the time and money to invest in this. And I took their series of courses. And this was a statistic that really sold me. It was a 78% reduction in the stress hormone of cortisol. This is huge. And this is a documented study. And the other thing they found was that blood lactate, which is another marker if you're under a lot of stress, was reduced by 87%. So this is a huge result. So that was the convincing element. So I invite you to check out The Art of Living. I don't make any money from it, of course, but it's just an alternative way if you're dealing with stress and you're really looking for a solution. It was fantastic, and I highly recommend it. Next question: how can one emotionally heal from traumas and psychological damage? It's a great question. I think it really stems down to a lack of belief that you actually can. Whenever I hear this question from a client, it really revolves around a lack of belief and a feeling that the trauma is going to have a permanent effect on their life. And what you find is if you actually do the work and really find somebody that can guide you through this, you can completely heal from any type of trauma or abuse. Okay? Is it true that healing from trauma can give access to forgotten memories? And this is actually one of the top 5 concerns people have when they're doing work on themselves if they're going to have to revisit the past. And that's asked by Tilja. And Tilja, if I was to answer your question directly, I'd say some methods do require that. And I think that's why a lot of people get stressed out. The brain may actually repress and block some of the things that happen to you as a form of protecting you. This happened to me. I actually had a gap, I believe it was around 3 or 4 days, where I couldn't remember what happened, and I was literally blocking it out. And I was actually happy. I was actually just had come home from the music festival I was at, and I was loving life. I was showing people the photos of everything I was doing, and then it all came back. So yes, your brain can repress it. The key thing is just understanding that therapy or the different coaching methods you get don't necessarily have to go back there at all. My staff actually pulled this diagram by Freud. He was the father of psychoanalysis. And what you'll find is that a lot of things that the mind is dealing with are actually shoved below the surface in the unconscious mind. And that's really what the struggle is some of those things come into the conscious mind when you're ready to deal with them. And mine was rather quickly, and it was abrupt, I'll tell you that, but I was able to work through it. How can acceptance help us heal from trauma or pain? And that was an anonymous question. Acceptance. I don't want you to misinterpret my answer. I don't want you to misinterpret that acceptance is approval of what happened to you by someone else. Or, yeah, really, that's the main one. Approval or even forgiveness. Acceptance is the art of living, the thing I was talking about at the beginning. That's one of their big tenets is acceptance. It's like there's a method of karate where you're actually, instead of fighting the energy of your opponent, you're actually using it to your advantage. And that's really what acceptance is about, is like not fighting and resisting the stressors in your life, but actually just letting them bounce off of you and having that like psychological flexibility to deal with problems. So, I mean, ultimately, you really need to put the work in to get to that point. And when you do, I'll tell you, that's where the freedom is because when you accept something, it's the beginning of letting it go. It doesn't mean that you're accepting it as permanent. That's the key distinction to leave today with this question, okay? Can we truly heal from trauma, or is it just adaptation? This chart is an excellent tool I found. And let's look at the left and right sides. So let's look at the top row. On the left, we have trauma adaptation. And on the right, we have trauma healing. And on the left, you have focuses on survival and short-term functioning. Then look at the right, focuses on growth and restoration. That's a key difference. Short-term versus growth and getting back to yourself. On the left again, under adaptation, you have involves defense mechanisms. And that's where you're basically avoiding the problem, right? And one of the things that you'll notice is you might think that you've forgotten about it, but that hypervigilance is the concept of your brain being like constantly activated and anxious all the time. And that's the exhausting part of dealing with SA, right? Is you're feeling like you're just constantly suspicious, constantly looking around you. So back to this chart, that's the problem. And when you're actually healing trauma, and we look at the right, it involves awareness, expression, and integration of emotions. It's like when you feel whole again. On the left, you have unconscious or automatic responses. And this is really your nervous system, the one below here, automatic responses. And that's really a core tenet of acceleration zone. And what we work on is your actual nervous system responses to trauma. And if you look at the right, you have intentional and guided self-compassion or therapy. We always recommend you're getting therapy. It's a big part of this. And at the bottom of adaptation again, maintain safety by limiting exposure. That means you're basically living in your house, swiping on your phone, living inside, and really avoiding life. I like to call it living under a rock. And that's how some people deal with this level of stress is you're not socializing. You're spending all your weekends on Netflix. It's basically like you're driving home from work and you get out of your car, you empty your groceries into your house, and it's not a matter of what you're doing that night. It's what movies you're going to watch on your random feed. And one of the things that happens when you're living this lifestyle is the very habits that you have to avoid emotional exposure are often re-triggering. And we'll go into that more in blockade. The opposite of that is restoring connection, trust, and that regulation of your nervous system. I know that's a really in-depth answer, but I wanted to help you out. Okay? How can expressing ourselves help us heal? It's protection. Number one. I think it's naive to think that if you've gone through something as terrible as this, that it couldn't happen again. You got to be prepared. One of the things that we're real big on is self-defense. In our program, we actually have a company that we partnered with, and we buy their keychain self-defense weapon, and it's amazing. And I think getting back to the question of self-expression is about being assertive again. We really have to ensure that you're in that warrior state when you need to. If someone tries to pull a move on you again, you got to be assertive. You got to be aware, but more importantly, you got to have the tools ready to deal with it if you need to. Was insight the key to healing or something else? And that's asked by Renee. Hi, Renee. I pulled this quote: insight, meaning awareness of the trauma, its impacts on one's responses and healing pathways, can be an important factor in healing from sexual assault trauma, but insight alone is not the key factor. And it wasn't for me. All of the insights that I think I had, one of them was I felt really stupid, right? I had the wits about me to recognize that the person that was offering this water to me came by me earlier in the night and offered it to me. And I batted it out of his hand and got rid of him and told him to go away. But I think I have no idea what time in the morning it was. It was probably like 2 or 3 in the morning. I was really exhausted, really dehydrated. I was out in the desert at Burning Man, and the guy offered the water again, and somehow I forgot. I feel so stupid about this, but I forgot and ended up taking that water, and that's how I ended up in all this danger, and having the insight to realize that it was just a mistake. I had this belief, while I was at Burning Man, that I was safe because I was a guy. And the other thing I had is like, I had this belief that I could recognize who an attacker would be, right? If it existed, but I was totally wrong, and these insights, they didn't help me heal at all. In fact, they were a source of being self-critical and being really hard on myself, It literally changed my life. Taking one drink of water, this stuff is so concentrated. And, I was really hard on myself, feeling like, how could I be so stupid to like recognize it was a problem earlier in the night and then end up drinking it later. So no, insight, while it can lead you to having more self-awareness, it's really the change in your nervous system and calming down that I've seen the best results with. Christine has asked, why do people get worse? Why do some people get worse before getting better and healing? I think that has a lot to do with your actual approach. Let me pull up my diagram here. This is small for some reason. Let's make this really big. Okay. So healing is like, say you're starting, this is where your like starting point was before everything happened. You're fine. You're probably happy, doing fine, right? What happens is it's like almost like a cliff-like drop in emotional state. And say this dotted line represents the lowest you've ever been in your life emotionally. Most of the time, this type of trauma will put you at the lowest state of your entire life. It's a lot to deal with, right? So what happens is these emotional states can put you at a new low that you've never experienced before. And what happens is a lot of attempts to try and get out of this are unsuccessful. And that's exactly where I was. I would keep trying. I tried books. I think that was the first thing I tried. I got therapy. That didn't work. I tried a variety of things, and it was like I was just hitting this wall and bouncing off of it. And there's actually a term called perturbation. And perturbation is when you're actually hitting something but getting rejected off of it. And what had to happen for me was I actually went to a 3-day course and completely rewired my mind in Los Angeles. It wasn't the art of living, the thing I was talking about before, it was something else. It was with Chris Howard, actually. And Chris and I worked on this for 3 days, and I walked out a completely different person. So, you know, you're going to be dealing with a lot of starts and stops and starts and stops. But the main thing I would suggest is do some homework and find out what activities or what coaching or what therapy have the best results for getting you out of this like, I don't know, this mud, this emotional mud that you're in, to the point where you actually feel like you can be yourself again. And that's really what is key. Is just realizing that some of the things that you're going to do aren't going to work, and you're actually going to feel stupid or frustrated because you put the time in and it didn't do anything, right? But just know that's, you're not perfect. You've never dealt with something like this before, and it's perfectly natural to try things that don't end up working, okay? It's part of it. All right. What role does self-forgiveness play? And that's asked by an anonymous person. I think that self-forgiveness was one of the elements that really helped me, especially if there was an operant behavior that you chose that got you in this pickle. It's like you can easily blame yourself, right? And that's what I did. Um, I felt really alone and confused. I'm just trying to think, like, back to answer your question. Like, I think the therapy helped with that. The therapist was like, basically let me off the hook to some degree, to realize, like, you didn't choose this. You didn't choose this outcome, despite the fact that you made the choice to accept somebody's water. It's like they're a professional criminal, and yeah, I mean, that was a big breakthrough. So I think that would be a really good, important part of your therapy, is looking for that. How does life look after trauma and addiction healing? It's amazing. I'm not someone that was ever actually addicted to anything, but I tell you, I've seen a lot of people use drugs and alcohol as a way to kind of like numb their mind to the drama and emotional pain that's in their mind after abuse. And the statistics show that that's one of the major coping mechanisms that people use. And this is all over the world, you know? And I, I mean, the whole weekend, I ended up going skydiving, and I put some of that on my channel. You can see. And, when you've moved beyond this stuff and you're enjoying your life again, that's the biggest thing. And I was so convinced, if you're listening to this, you're probably convinced right now that you can't have that dream lifestyle and an outcome because this unplanned um, detour has happened that feels like permanent. And the metaphor that I had when I was in therapy was, I told the therapist, I feel like my life was this beautiful mosaic of like Jenny and my life and our dreams and our goals. And it felt like the assault had shattered that thing into, like, imagine you took a a paint, one of those beautiful, like from a church, you took like a beautiful mosaic of glass and you just threw it 100 feet in the air and it landed on the ground and shattered into pieces like that big. It's not, you can't, like that metaphor is how I felt. Like you can't assemble this stuff back into its former state. But I was so wrong. Like, if I can just share with you one thing, it's like a lot of the examples and language and words you're using to describe your situation, they feed the permanency feelings that you have in your mind. So how you actually shake that is you have to surround yourself with at least one person. Hopefully, I'm that person for you at the beginning, but more hopefully into your life of people that are living their life. They're having families. They're happy, right? They're successful, and this abuse stuff is just a minor piece of old news that doesn't interfere anymore. It's amazing. So that would be my explanation about that. And to address the addiction piece, yeah, I think if you actually look at curing addiction, one of the ways that they're finding the cure rates to go up, they have actually improved that in the last 24 months, is one of my friends is a therapist, and he explained to me actually at the skydiving place yesterday how their treatment rates have gone up with their success rates dramatically. And it's because instead of trying to deal with the drugs and alcohol, they're going one layer lower. And they're like, what causes someone to feel so anxious that they would get so effed up all the time, and get drunk or high all the time? And it really has to do with the processing of this SA stuff. That's the key. If you can get rid of the source of that anxiety, your attraction to substances will go down. Anonymous question: why is American culture resistant to empathy around trauma? It's a great question. I think that looking at this chart from a previous question, you can see that when you end up going down this path of just emotional tragedy right here, you can see that feeling of overwhelm. And the thing in America, and I've lived all over the world. I lived a whole year in Australia. One of the things that's really rampant in American culture is defining yourself on your success and your financial position in life, right? And I'll tell you this is not good for your finances, right? Getting assaulted is not good. 50% of men and women that have this happen to them are unemployed within a year. 50%. The average loss of income is significant. And I think that American culture can judge people who are out of work, or just like your status in America seems to be inextricably linked to your profession and how you're doing financially, which is total crap. If you go live in Australia, how people relate to you there, it's like how good you are with your friends, how many close, how many stories you have. I mean, it was an amazing experience living in a different country, and it just helped me realize, like, when I was going through this, because I was in Australia before this happened, I was nicer to myself about the difficulties I was having. I actually got fired. We'll go into that more in one of my classes where I explain how that happened. But yeah, I was stressed out at work. I remember I was at a Fortune 500 company. I was dressed like this. I was doing everything right, but I wasn't right emotionally. And I remember at one point, my manager walked up behind me. It was really weird. The onboarding was so bad. They put me in this office where I was facing the wall, and I had headphones on, and I was taking all their e-learning. Like, have you ever had a job where they put you on all this e-learning forever? Like sit at the desk for a week and watch all these videos. So that's what I was doing. And I remember the manager, she's this nice lady. She taps me on the shoulder, scared the hell out of me. I turn around, I'm like, and I'm just like an emotional mess, right? Like, just so uneasy. She's like, "Are you okay?" I'm like, "Yeah, I'm fine. I'm fine." You know what I mean? Like, And it was quickly apparent to the staff there that I just couldn't handle the politics of the organization. It was the only time in my life I was ever fired, and never was fired again. But I directly link it to dealing with this period in my life. Again, going back here, is that when you're dealing with all of this negative emotion, until you find your breakout point, you're going to be really susceptible to getting fired. That's the bottom line. If 50% of women and men are fired after they're abused within the year, you really got to get on this, and you got to get this resolved as fast as you can, because this can affect your career. What's the best way to heal from trauma and anxiety? Great question. Absolutely. I would say forming a dream team around yourself, including a therapist, a doctor, a coach, and really following a proven method that allows you to model successful survivors. Let me zoom in here and kind of talk more about what that looks like. When we're actually teaching our main program is called SenSync Pro, and it has four emotions rather. I'm going to draw a quadrant for you. Let's put this on the camera. There we go. And we call it getting your swag back. And it's an acronym for 4 letters. So the first one is called serenity. And that's where we're actually teaching you how to relax. Don't underestimate the importance of that when you're going through this. Your nervous system gets all messed up from that stress. That hypervigilance we're talking about earlier, where you're like constantly stressed, constantly looking around for danger. It's exhausting. And the more tired you get, the worse you sleep, and you just spiral down into the dumps, like we're talking about here. So how you get out of this is you master these 4 emotions. And I didn't come up with these 4 emotions. I looked at 250 emotions, and I read books, hundreds of books on their autobiographies, actually, of people who'd been through abuse. I was looking for the pattern. Like, what's the pattern? There's got to be a pattern to this. And there were 4 emotions that were in all of them. Like Oprah Winfrey, for example, would be one of the best examples. So the W stands for warrior. And the warrior we were talking about earlier, when someone talked about, how do you express yourself? A lot of times what happens after abuse is you start to just kind of come in, right? Living under the rock, as we talked about earlier. And the warrior is about self-expression, about telling people with full voice, like, I'm not going to yell here, but like full power, how to tell people to stay away from you if necessary. And it's a key part of preventing this from happening again, which is super important. But self-expression is really going to come from your assertiveness. And not only that, the warrior is about increasing the standard of where you want to live your life and not settling to live down here in the dumps anymore. When you actually have that warrior emotion, it's like you're putting that line in the sand that you're deciding, this is my time. This is my life. I'm not going to settle for this. I'm not going to live below the line down here. I got to change. And that comes from the warrior. Aliveness is the A. This is where you actually model happy and successful people. It's not about studying sick people or people dealing with trouble in their lives. It's really like, how do I model people who are actually having fun again? Like, what a concept, right? Like for me, my aliveness community is skydiving. Like I spent the whole weekend skydiving with everyone, and you couldn't believe, like I made a new friend, and he is so nice. And we hung out. We watched the Dodgers win the World Series. And it's like he's just such an amazing person. And what I'm finding in my aliveness community is nobody knows about my YouTube channel, of course, because it's so friggin' small already. But as it grows and as more people in my Facebook groups learn about what I do, they would be so shocked that I have this crazy past of dealing with somebody trying to kill me, and abuse me. But the key is being in these aliveness communities, and it doesn't have to be skydiving. It could be e-biking for women, a women's e-biking group. It could be a self-defense class. It could be knitting. It doesn't matter as long as it involves other people and your identity is not a survivor in that group. That's key. Last one, gratitude. I can't tell you how important this is. When you're down here, going back to this chart of dealing with arguably the worst thing you've ever had in your life, it's really easy when you're living in the mud, the emotional mud down here. It's really easy to, it's really easy. It's really easy to think that good things are never going to happen to you or that they're not happening to you right now. The worst side effect, there's so many bad side effects of what happened to you, but one of them is you have these dark glasses on about your life and about your future. And they're crippling, honestly. And if I just told you, hey, write in your gratitude journal once a day, that's like going to, how would I describe? It's a good metaphor. It's like going to being a farmer and trying to use a hand tool instead of one of those giant farming machines, a combine, right? That's the difference. You got to have a gratitude practice that allows you to really master this. Because, if I came to you in what I would call your normal part of your life, which was before this happened, let's use the padcam again. If I came to you here and I'm like, hey, just go in your journal and write one good thing that happened to you a day, you're probably going to have quite an impressive change. But after you're dealing with this and you're down here in the emotional mud and you're not having breakthroughs and you're getting frustrated, that's not going to cut it. So you really need to have a world-class solution for gratitude. And that's one of the core things that we teach you. It's very advanced and it works consistently. You can take somebody that's convinced that their life is crap and totally turn that attitude around with the processes that we teach. Okay? So in total, the best way to heal is to get these 4 emotions in check and really live them fully. Your serenity allows you to relax. Your warrior allows you to express and protect yourself. Your aliveness allows you to smile and have fun again. And your gratitude allows you to look at your future and your present with a sense of that everything's going to be okay again. It's priceless. It's absolutely priceless. Okay. How to maintain relationships while healing. And that's asked by an anonymous client. Here's the data. And I'm a big data guy. When survivors disclosed their assault to intimate partners, it was the partner's positive response to disclosure, i.e. being validating, supportive, that was significantly associated with a greater disclosure engagement. In English, that means that the more receptive that person was, the more that you opened up to them. And I can tell you from experience, like the power of having a supportive person, in my life to help me with this was paramount. It can have a lot of impacts on relationship, particularly intimacy. The sooner you do one thing, the better. And it's where you end up separating. Say you're heterosexual, right? I'm into women. If you're gay, that's fine. But whatever your partner type that you're into, you want to separate the attacker from that group, right? So if you're a female and a guy did this to you, you want to change that from a guy did this to you to a criminal did this to you. You want to basically take all the association that you have with that person, that attacker, and put it onto the label of criminal. And why that's valuable is you're not out to date a criminal next, right? You're looking for a person that you love, that you can be intimate with. And it really has to do with not collapsing identities. And then I like to speak at like a sixth grade level here. Collapsing identities is where you don't generalize that all men are bad, etc., or all women are bad. It's really about isolating this behavior to one specific person and getting that person the hell out of your life and getting all the emotional baggage out of your life as well. That's how you're able to be present and have an amazing relationship. And I'll tell you this, again, for those negative beliefs where you're feeling like you can't heal your emotion, have your intimacy, you can have fireworks. I mean, amazing intimacy and fireworks, regardless of this. You just have to do the work. Okay? Does belief in a higher power help healing? Controversial question asked by Eldritch. You know, this is really my opinion on this, is like religious people don't inherently heal faster, but if their faith gives them meaning, belonging, and emotional safety, it massively accelerates recovery. But if it adds guilt, suppression, or fear, it slows it down. So let's talk about what that means. It means that the community that you're going to be a part of supporting you. I mean, I was part of a church when this happened, the Life Church, and it was amazing. We went every week. And I ended up telling the pastor there what had happened, looking for support. And he was so amazing. He got this team of people to help us out, but they weren't really prepared for that type of issue. They didn't have the training for it. So I got a lot more out of working with Chris or the therapist that I worked with. But I would say this, like, one of the biggest challenges I had, to be just totally open with you, is like, I was so angry at God, right? Like, how could anything like this ever happen to a human being when they didn't, that was the conversation I had. I was so pissed off. I was so angry. And how the hell did I work through that? It took time. But I don't think that I had a good relationship in this area of my life. I don't think it was a major asset for me because I was really confused with, it's a philosophical question, but like, how could God allow this to happen to me was my question that I was fixated on, and ultimately, like, I'm just here to share my beliefs. My beliefs are that human beings on this planet have a lot of operant control on what they do. And some people are just criminals. They're terrible people, and one of them got me. I don't know if you can make any more meaning around it than that. But I'm a person that tends to believe that I don't know what to believe on that, actually. I mean, you can say on one hand, that terrible thing that happened to me allowed me to have my dream job. When I was 18, someone asked me what my dream job was. It was to be a motivational speaker and a hypnotist. I was like, how the hell do you put that together? Well, here we are, we have one of the best programs in the world for SA. And I think that, I go back and forth. Like, is it worth it? Like, if I could go back in time and like erase that from my life, would I still do it? I think it really comes down to you watching this. Like, hopefully the impact of all the time that I put into this and Jenny put into this makes it all worth it, But these questions are stupid in the first place because you can't get into a DeLorean time machine and change what happened to you. And that kind of thinking is kind of a waste of time. You really got to focus on the present moment and, and live your life fully, regardless of what you believe. We got to turn things around now while you're here on this earth, regardless of what your beliefs are about the future. Your time to be happy is now, and we can help you with that. Okay. Can healing unlock forgotten memories? And that's asked by Tilja. We actually answered that already. That's a repeat. How does someone heal if they can't grieve? And that's asked by Marcos. Hi, Marcos. So your question is, how does someone heal if they can't grieve? Grieving is a form of processing, right? Processing pain. And it comes down to that self-belief again, that things are permanent and that you can't get out of it. And it's very likely that you've been trying to do this on your own and trying to find, YouTube videos to be your solution, but this isn't a dishwasher. You're not looking up you know, you're not looking up how to use an app on your phone. This is a big problem you're dealing with, and you want to have a team around you. You can look at one of my prior episodes to find the whole diagram of the dream team that I had around me that I intentionally put together. But that grieving process, there's ways to interpret your question, because I always have you guys give me the question short because we don't want to put someone's story out there. But the grieving process is like looking at the life that you had before. But I'll tell you this, like, let's go back to this diagram. This is where I started. I had a great life, and then obviously that abuse put me here. And all the effort I put to get out of it was so draining and so significant. But this is where I'm at now. I'm higher in life and enjoying life more than I ever have. If this was the best it ever got, let me zoom out here. If this represents the start, and then I ended up down here, and then I couldn't break past this until I did the work. But when I found the solution, my life now is amazing. Hopefully you get to meet Jenny from some of the trainings that we do. I have an amazing family and an amazing life. And, I'm going skydiving, I'm paragliding, I'm doing all the things I wanted to. I have a job, I'm contributing to people's lives, and it's better than before. And you can have some degree of that too. Maybe you'll even do better than me. But you got to get to that point where you have that breakthrough and things turn around. But the whole idea of grieving is like the old me died and I'll never have something as good again. But it's BS. It's not true. It's not true. It's not true at all. You can absolutely turn things around and get to where you want to be and reach a level of life that's 10 times better than where you started. If this was a real chart, this would be off the charts. So remember, you can have that too. What support systems help trauma healing? And that's an anonymous question. So trauma can take many forms, including physical, emotional, and psychological. And it's caused by events such as abuse, loss, accidents, violence. Without proper support, trauma survivors may struggle to regain stability and to find the strength to move forward. This is why building a support system is crucial. Now, the data, remember, everything's data. The data shows that the people that don't disclose this to anybody and they keep it a tight secret, they do not have as good a result. That's the bottom line. And the false belief is this. The false belief is that if I share this with someone, something bad will happen and my life will be worse than it is now. and I'll feel worse. But the data is the opposite. The data shows that if you actually share this with someone and get the support, you can have an amazing breakthrough. An amazing breakthrough. But to get there, one of the biggest challenges is, how do I disclose this? Like, how do I actually tell someone I trust that this happened to me? It's so hard. It's so hard. But we're releasing a program called Support Blueprint, and it's where we actually do this for you. Jenny and I have a video that we've made that you can actually send to a family member that you need support from. And it tells that something happened. It's like a conversation starter. When you feel that muzzle effect, that feeling like that you can't express this. And it's nothing you did wrong. It's just the fear, the cortisol. It's all in your body, and it makes it hard to talk. So check that out when that comes out. It's called Support Blueprint. All right. That's our entire show for today. I wanted to thank you. And again, if you're dealing with this, just make sure that you're attending this class once a week and really take these answers to heart and make sure that you build that dream team, your therapist, and make sure that that yellow chart I showed you 50 times today, you're on that journey right now. You're in the middle of it. And maybe you're below that dotted line that represents, where you're struggling and can't get out of it. And I'm telling you, if you figure out how to get these emotions in your life, you're going to end up surpassing your previous best life, and you can truly unlock what you want. And I wish you the best. Take care.